good afternoon. We all have encountered the 20 by unhappy patients, and it's not a good feeling to have them. A 20/20 vision post refractive surgery is everybody's goal. And many a times most of the times, we are very, very successful in achieving it, but yet we have all encountered such unhappy patients. What are we tending to miss in them, and how can we help them is the goal of my presentation. So the original articles which were published in 2004 and then in 2008 rated the patient satisfaction after LASIK ranging from 82 to 98%. However, the recent articles which speak of modern laser in situ keratoconiosis outcomes published in 2016 report that the patient satisfied out of the dissatisfied patients, only 1.2% patients land up being dissatisfied with surgery. How do we help these 1.2% patients as well? Why did we come to the thought of dissatisfaction at the first place? So FDA had approved LASIK bang in 1995, but it was in 2008 when a group of 140 dissatisfied patients who had suicidal ideations and extreme dissatisfaction and difficulty in their daily activities that FDA started with the LASIK Quality of Life Collaboration Project in 2009, giving rise to the patient-related outcome with LASIK Project 1 and 2. The purpose of this the purpose of Prowl 1 and Prowl 2 was finding out through an online web-based questionnaire what are the visual symptoms, what are the dry eye symptoms, what is the satisfaction level of a patient with vision and with LASIK, and what are the quality of life indicators along with the OSD indicators in a patient who is supposed to go ahead for a refractive surgery, and what are the outcomes 3 months later. So we found by the results of a survey of complications that the most important four reasons why a patient lands up being dissatisfied after refractive surgery despite being 20/20 is the advent of new night vision disturbances, dry and ocular surface diseases, non-strabismic visual disturbances, and last but not the least, psychological factors and what is the patient expecting out of the surgery. So the new vision disturbances could be double images, glare, halo, and starburst. And also of importance to notice that the patient may be having low contrast visual acuity. Before we mention what are the preoperative factors that we must have considered, I would like to bring to your notice that the Prowl 1 and Prowl 2 were able to identify that because we are not testing these patients or we are not asking these patients, we miss that these patients were preoperatively also having symptoms like ghosting, glare, halos, and starburst. And up to 46% of the patients reported development of no new symptoms after the surgery. In fact, 34% patients had these symptoms even prior to surgery. Out of these participants, it was also noticed that these symptoms that tended to develop, more than 90 to 50% range of the symptoms tended to resolve within 3 months after the refractive surgery. So what could have been the major reasons that we would have tended to miss? Most important being the wavefront analysis and finding out of higher order aberrations, specifically the spherical aberration, which should have been ideally corrected with a wavefront optimized profile and not with the standard laser procedures, which tend to induce these spherical aberrations. Better still, if we could go for wavefront guided and completely wavefront optimized platforms. Also of controversial role have been the pupil size versus the ablation zone. Earlier till 2008, it was considered very important that the ablation zone should be larger than the mesopic pupil size. However, now with the latest studies, the role has been found to be controversial. The patients who are inching towards their 40s or older should not be left behind in the refractive surgery, but should definitely be identified for the possibility of a dysfunctional lens syndrome, wherein the lens might appear to be clear, but the patient could be having minimal scattering of light within the lens, giving rise to difficulties post-surgery. So what happens after the surgery? After the surgery, patient could be having induced higher order aberrations, a residual corneal astigmatism. There could have been a subclinical decentration or irregular epithelial changes, which are causing the patients to have this night vision symptoms. The advanced ablation systems may prevent these, More so in surgeries, in the advanced technology of SMILE, the patient related outcomes have identified that the night vision disturbances are also extremely minimal. The match comparisons of higher order aberrations which have been induced by SMILE versus LASIK versus PRK found that SMILE gives better results in mesopic conditions, though femtolasic and PRK may have better results in photopic, but SMILE is better when it comes to mesopic conditions, even in high myopia correction. How do we treat these patients? In the initial part, the patients can be advised a pupillary constricting medicine such as brimonidine. Patient could be advised that while driving, you should switch on the dashboard light inside your car so that the pupil comes down to a smaller size. Surface treatment and also treatment with the help of nutraceuticals can also help the patient in regularizing the epithelial surface. If nothing is helping the patient, a customized topo-guided ablation zone enlargement may also land up helping the patient. So this we see that if there is only corneal residual astigmatism, a PAL syndrome has been described in 2019, which mentions that a vector planning giving rise to emphasis on the topography guided values of corneal astigmatism also may help the patient by recorrecting the patient later. Role of counseling and neural adaptation must not be forgotten, and studies have proven that it can take approximately 10 weeks for the visual symptoms to adapt to this new state of blur following the refractive surgery. Dr. Raghav has already excellently covered the ocular surface diseases. I'm just reiterating that the damage to corneal nerves, toxic epitheliopathy, alterations in the morphology, and exaggeration of the pre-existing dry eye is the most important reason. And Prowl 1 and 2 showed to us that there are worse visual symptoms with increasing severity of OSD. Also, the satisfaction with the vision and surgery falls down as the OSD becomes more and more severe. Do not miss the possibility of hormonal imbalances, contact lens induced meibomian gland dysfunctions or dropouts, and the patient history of medications of being on isotretinoin or amiodarone or antidepressants. All this history is extremely important. A pre-op clinical examination by simple staining, Schirmer, OSD will help us in clinching the diagnosis pre-operatively and avoid us in treating dry eye diseases patients aggressively for refractive without managing them prior to surgery. Post-operative, of course, the same management principles apply to the dry eye management. Pre-operatively, it has been found that the optimization of the ocular surface with IPL therapies helps the patient in adapting to refractive surgery faster. Coming to non-strabismic binocular vision anomalies, a patient presenting with doubling of vision, difficulty in focusing, asthenopia, strains, glare halos, or an apparent regression, we must not miss the possibility of the patient having vergence or accommodative anomalies. These anomalies are, present even otherwise in the patient prior to surgery as well. In 30 to 40% of the patients of age 21 to 40 years, the possibility of convergence insufficiency or excess, divergence insufficiency or excess is always there. So we must take care and properly investigate the patient, not only for visual acuity, anterior posterior segment examination, but also for stereopsis, the establishment of dominant eye, for apparentropias or phorias, and also the looking for any near point of convergence or accommodation anomalies. These patients should be subjected to vision therapy. And if they're coming even after surgery, a vision therapy will definitely help them in overcoming their problems. Don't forget to identify the dominant eye because undercorrection in this eye deranges the balance. Monovision will only help patients who have equal visual acuity with distance correction only in the dominant eye. Never overcorrect the myopes, it will decrease their convergence. And NSBVA is an important differential in patients presenting as regression. When the patient is complaining of glare and halos, a binocular vision assessment is warranted, and a pre-op BVA will help us in improving the surgical outcomes of these patients. Not to forget, finally, the personality issues of the patient, which can have an important implication on what outcome we are giving to the patient. So health-related quality of life questionnaires prior to surgery can help us in identifying how optimistic, how health-prone, how anxious or depressive, or how desirable responsive to the society expectations the patient is after the surgery. These studies have also proven that, once we are investigating the patient's ocular problems post surgery, it is important to work also on their psychological strengths when they are dealing with their ocular discomfort and dissatisfaction. So 2020 is definitely our goal, and the pursuit of happiness is always a lofty goal. But I do wish that after this small snippet, we'll all land up with only 20 and happy patients. Thank you very much.